my name is Soleil and welcome back to the Little Reader's Corner. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2022. Yes, this is a little late. Yes, it's basically March. By the time you're seeing this, it probably already is March. It is what it is. So let's talk about some of my favorite books from last year, what really stuck with me, what books I loved. So we've got a little bit of a shorter list than other years. We've got, I think, 5. Yes, we've got 5 books to talk about today. So honestly, my favorite book of the year was the first book I read in 2022. I don't know how that happened, but that was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. You probably know Taylor Jenkins Reid from her more recent work, which would be Daisy Jones the Sixth, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Malibu Rising, Carrie Soto is Back. Or Carrie is back? I think Carrie Soto is back. So recently I began going back through her older books, and now I've actually read all of her backlist titles. So I've read all of her work, except I'm still currently reading Carrie Soto is Back. So let's talk about Forever Interrupted. This is, I almost hesitate to say it, but my favorite book she's written, and I've read almost all of her works now. So I feel like I can now say that this is definitely my favorite. Loved Evelyn Hugo, loved Daisy Jones, loved the other ones, but this one has a special place in my heart. So basically this is a story about love and loss. It's about a woman who just got engaged or just got married. Yeah, she just got married like 2 weeks ago. That's where the story starts, and then her husband is killed in a tragic accident. So this story is told in 2 different perspectives. It's told in the present moment after she's dealing with such a heavy and intense loss of the love of her life. And then it also switches back to moments before the accident happened and moments that really encapsulate their love and how they fell in love. And the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid tells these 2 timelines and 2 stories in parallel is phenomenal. It's absolutely beautiful. I don't often cry when reading books, and I was sobbing while reading this, and it is very emotional and heavy at times, but it's also such a beautiful story, and I just love how she ended it. I loved the different pieces that were told throughout it. I think this is her best work, and I loved it so much. And this was my favorite read of the year, and I read it in January of 2022. So next up, I have a reread. So I reread Radio Silence by Alice Oseman last summer. And this was when I had just finished my spring semester of grad school. I was exhausted. I couldn't bring myself to read anything either remotely for my field or for fun. I was so exhausted and so burnt out. So I decided to listen to the audiobook of Radio Silence because I wanted to get back into reading for fun over the summer. It didn't really happen. I was too burnt out. It wasn't gonna happen. But during that time, I did enjoy re-listening to Radio Silence. And I have read this either 2 or 3 times now. I'm not a rereader of books. I have reread a few of my favorite books or like graphic novels. And I have reread a few books, like some classics that I had to read for my bachelor's degree in English. But besides for that, I don't typically like to reread books. I don't know why. I am like a prime target for rereading because I don't remember what happens in stories like months or like even a year after they happen. So I could actually read books as if it were the first time, but for some reason, doesn't really happen. So basically this is about Frances, who is very kind of like type A. She's very into studying, doing work for school, but she also is really entrenched in this like podcast fandom and loves listening to this podcast called Radio City, right? See, I can't even remember what it is, and I've read this book like 3 times. Anyways, she loves this podcast, and so she meets someone in her school and they kind of become friends, they become buds, and then later she finds out that this person is also the creator of this podcast. So it's kind of just telling the story of them in high school, hanging out, becoming closer friends, but then also our main character Frances kind of knowing this deeper secret without the creator and her friend like knowing it. And it's just kind of like a very much character-driven story, and it captures a lot of discussions about mental health and anxiety very well, and it's just beautiful. I love this story. So reread it, loved it. Who would have thought? I also read The Witcher: The Last Wish last year, and this is kind of like, it's not exactly the first story in the Witcher series. It's the first one that chronologically takes place, but this one was actually written later, and it's a collection of short stories. So just a warning, if you love the Witcher show or are at all interested in starting these books, it's important to know that these are short stories, so they overall kind of cover what the first season of The Witcher covers, and it's kind of like a jump back into history. But the true story starts with the first book, which is The Blood of Elves, which is actually going to be the third season of the show The Witcher. So just so you know, this is my gorgeous illustrated edition. I love it. I love it so much. I want to own all of them in this edition, but it's expensive, so it's gonna take a very long time until I can afford to do that. But anyways, so this is about Geralt of Rivia. He is a Witcher, which is kind of like an enhanced human being, so he has stronger like fighting skills, and there's a whole backstory for how these like enhanced humans are created, which if you read the stories you'll find out, so I won't spoil that for you. But anyways, he hunts creatures, he hunts monsters in particular. So this collection of short stories is, I think, 5 tales that kind of give more background to the original story and plot line, which is really fascinating. Loved reading it in the illustrated edition, and since then I have started the next collection of stories, so excited to read more. Love this series, love the show, love the video game. It's all amazing. Next up, I have Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. So this was actually, I think, basically or almost the last book that I read of 2022. I read the entire Lovelight Farms series. The first in the series is Lovelight Farms, and I read it originally on Kindle Unlimited, and I had a copy, but I gave it to my friend for Christmas, and now the self-published copies are out of print because I think it was Berkeley Romance bought them, so they're being re-released, and they have the same cover but like slightly different font. But they're being re-released in April, so now I have to wait to get my own physical copies because I gave my copy to my friend. Anyways, so this is a series that starts off with the first story of one of the owners of this Christmas tree farm in this tiny little town in, I think, Maryland. And it's a super cute story. It's a romance. It's kind of like a friends to lovers situation. The only thing is that I have really grown to dislike communication issues as like the main conflict in a plot, and all of the last romances that I've read that I've like enjoyed and read all the way through, communication has been like the main point of conflict. So I'm trying to find other romances where that's not the issue, it's something else. But anyways, loved this book, loved this story. I sped through it so quickly. The other books in the series are based off of other characters in this town and their romances, and they all kind of have like a different romance story, but it's really fun because the more you read into the series, the more you see recurring characters from around the neighborhood and around the town popping up, and it's just kind of like a really sweet, beautiful atmosphere, and I loved it. And the last book on this list just barely made the cut. This was more of a like 4-star, 3 high-star book. It didn't really make the 5 stars, but I still wanted to talk about it because I still enjoyed it, and that is I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I love Casey McQuiston's work. You've probably heard of Red, White, and Royal Blue, which they also wrote. What's the other one? I think it was this one, that one. This is a story about, so this is Casey McQuiston's first YA novel, which was the only reason I didn't love it as much. I'm more into adult books these days, but this takes place in a high school where it's a Christian academy, and the main character, Chloe Green, her main rival is the prom queen, Shara Wheeler, who is like the principal's perfect progeny. Shara is like very popular, all these things, and then at some point Shara Wheeler disappears and leaves all these letters and these clues for Chloe and her friends. And they're the only people who have any kind of like inkling or clue where Chloe went. And before Shara Wheeler disappeared, she kissed Chloe. And Chloe's very confused. They always used to be rivals. But now Chloe's unsure if maybe there's some kind of romance going on between them. So she wants answers. She wants to find Shara Wheeler. That's kind of where the story goes on. And it's kind of a romance story-ish, but don't really go in expecting that because it's a little bit more of a mystery, classic teen high school coming of age story with a little bit of like a romantic twist. So anyways, wanted to include that and talk about that one a little bit as well. So those were all of my best books of 2022. I did not read as much as I wanted to last year. I was reading quite a bit up until like maybe April, and then with spring finals and complete burnout and then fall semester, it was just not happening for me. So I think I read like 20 something books. So these were my favorites. Of those 20, they were the top ones. Most of these I gave 5 stars. I think Shara Wheeler was the only one I gave 4. Yeah, so let me know what your favorite book was of 2022 or recent favorite, because at this point 2022 was at like 3 months away. Anyways, I will see you in the next one. Bye!